Hello everyone, this is Lindsay, and I decided to present the information this way, this time, meaning via video, and I'm using Camtasia. You'll be seeing some images, and those I brought in to Camtasia. I've got some PowerPoint slides that I made to images and brought in. I have some photos. You can see this one of me here. I'm not going to caption this video because I know that although it would probably be helpful, none of you need that accommodation. This is kind of a quick and dirty video, and I'm going to be asking you to do a screencast during this unit, and it can also be quick and dirty. In fact, you don't need to use Camtasia. It would be great if you do, but you can just use Jing or Screencast-O-Matic or any screencasting tool that you like. You'll also see that this video that I made in Camtasia is sitting in what's called a Vialog. And a Vialog is a software that I think was made by Teachers College Columbia, and you can comment on the side of it. So I think that's great because you can comment and it's timestamped so you can reply to each other's comments. So in lieu of having an in-class kind of mini lecture with with questions and conversation while it's happening, we're going to do it online. This is me down in the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, and I was really, really hot at that time. And so I'm trying to remember mentally and physically how I felt then, because I'm so tired of being cold. This is where I was in Nicaragua at that time. You see the city Bluefields, that's where my brother lives, and I was actually in that little piece of land that's completely undeveloped. I just thought I would share that and bring us all to a very warm place. So what I want to talk about is learner interaction and engagement, and this is really the heart of online learning. This is what makes it fun. It's also very challenging to do and to do well. When I talk about interaction, I'm not talking about just interaction with each other, and of course that's important, but that's what we usually think of. I'm also talking about interacting with the content and interacting with the instructor and interacting with online tools. So when we talk about interacting with the content, providing the content in a way that causes us to think, to grapple with issues, to not just to be receiving it. If you refer back to the video I posted in the last section about providing physics videos in a way that are confusing, actually showed better learning outcomes. Why? Because the students were more cognitively engaged with the content. We also talk about interaction with the instructor. The teacher presence is very important, and there has to be opportunities for feedback from the instructor and quality interactions. Peers, this is where you can come together, and it also creates an engagement in terms of you have community, and once you have community, you're more likely to stay the course, as they say. And then there's the interaction with the online tools. So we have a bunch of online tools at our disposal now, and what is the interaction like for students? You have things like quizzes and that we talked about, that frequent quizzing helps students learn, and that's an interaction with the tool, and the tool is giving them instant feedback, and that's a good way to use a tool to interact with students. And we know that engaged students, we get better outcomes. So how do we create these effective online interactions? That's what we're going to be looking into over the next few weeks and grappling with and experimenting with, and I find it's an ongoing challenge. I won't say struggle, I'll say challenge, and I enjoy it, but I always can learn more. I can always do it better, and I think I have something down with one group of students and then it doesn't work with another group of students. So when it works well, it's so gratifying. So, stay the course. So the tool I'm going to talk to you guys today about is discussion forums. And I know this sounds really basic, but discussion forums really are the heart of online courses, especially ones that are facilitated in a learning management system such as Moodle. But also, I see teachers using Google Plus communities, using Facebook or other tools to discuss things online. So I'm going to focus on discussion forums for the purpose of this little talk, but a lot of these points can be extrapolated to other tools. So why is interaction important? Well, it's an opportunity for community building, and in many courses, I'm a language teacher, so if I don't have a community built, my students aren't going to feel safe taking risks. So to me, from day one, I am doing exercises that cultivate that sense of community to create that trust factor. And I think that is with any subject, though. People are going to share in a different way if you feel like you have trust among your peers. It also creates student-centered learning. It moves the teacher from in front. If the student's interacting with all these different levels, with their peers, with the content, with the software, the teacher's there, but more the guide on the side role. The social construction of knowledge, and this is referring to constructivism. Social constructivism, and when you have an opportunity to discuss things together in meaningful, productive ways, or create things together, projects, you're going to be socially constructing knowledge. And then there's formative assessment, which versus summative assessment, which is the traditional traditional tests, quizzes. Formative assessment is seeing where students are at that point. So if you have students participating, when I see students participating in discussion forums, I can see how people are grappling with the material at that point in time. If they're doing a group project, I can see how they're applying the material. So I find formative assessment much more useful than the summative assessment because it's more real. It's real time. Of course, this isn't easy. It isn't easy to build these great communities, to have quality formative assessment, all student-centered learning, social construction of knowledge. This isn't easy. We have to really think about how you're crafting your activities. And there's many pitfalls, and we want to avoid them. So first I'm just going to go over what those common pitfalls are, especially in discussion forums, but again, it could be extrapolated to other activities. And then we'll go into ways to avoid them. So one of the common pitfalls is non-participation, right? You set up your question. I have teachers who put up their question in their discussion forum, and then nobody responds. So it's like you're in an empty room just shouting out questions. But the thing is that, and then I'll have instructors say, you know what, I'm not going to do discussion forums because my students don't, they don't ever really respond. So I find when the students aren't responding, that is a challenge. That's a call to action. What can I do to get the students to respond? Another common pitfall is the silo effect. So that is, you pose your question, and one student writes their answer, next student writes their answer, next student writes their answer, but no one's actually interacting with each other. And that is because, sometimes if you don't tell them they have to interact with each other, sometimes students just won't. So you have to create, not just by making a rule like, oh, you have to respond to each other, but creating an activity that requires people to interact and respond to each other. Another common one is the echo chamber. It's when you pose a question in your discussion forum, and then everyone yodels the same answer. And usually that's going to happen because you're asking a question that is not a higher level order thinking skill. It's something like maybe summarize what happened in this battle in World War II. Well, if everyone's reading the same content, the summaries are going to be pretty much everyone just giving a little blurb of the same information, and it's really not going to be that interesting to read, and it's not going to really call for different answers. But if you're asking questions that require higher order thinking skills, compare and contrast, synthesize, give your opinion, bring yourself into this, the answers are going to differ. So you have to look at, if you're getting a lot of repetitive answers, how can you ask a question that just won't do that? Another common problem, flat responses. When people are just responding like, there's no passion. Again, you have to look at the question. Are you asking things that are going to bring on passion, that are going to be directly drawn to the people's lives that you're talking to, your students? They need to be able to make connections to their lives and make it meaningful. Otherwise, those responses are going to be dull. So what can we do to avoid these pitfalls? So I've identified 5 things to consider when using discussion forums with your students, but again, this can be used with many different online tools. One is creating community. Now, the quality and depth of conversation improves when people have a higher level of comfort with each other. This makes sense, right? I mean, the first day of class, you're not going to engage as much as you might at midterms, because now you know each other better. You know some personal things about your classmates. You've become friends. Maybe you've gone out for a drink. So at this point, you're going to be sharing at a deeper level. So that's why it's really important to create that community. I saw a study that confirmed this at a conference I went to, and I thought it was, it's kind of common sense, but I felt like the study confirms that actually, yes, if people know each other better, they're going to have better quality and depth of conversation. So that's also good level setting expectations for yourself. Like if you're frustrated in the beginning of the course because you're like, gosh, the students aren't really kind of putting out what I'd like them to see, they're being kind of a little surface, keep developing that community, and I think you'll see that by midterms, people are sharing at a deeper level. I mean, that's what I find with my language students. Another very, very important part is scaffolding, right? And scaffolding is building those supports. So the first time I, was teaching a blended language course, I was so excited. I had my discussion forums, and my students, they really just did not know how to participate in a discussion forum. Sure, they're on Facebook and they're emailing and they're maybe tweeting, but they have not, in an academic way, participated in a discussion forum. And I didn't provide enough guidance around that. I also didn't provide enough emphasis that this was a very important part of my class. So what my students tended to do was like, okay, the online workbook, the MyLab, that looks a lot, a MyLab like a Pearson software that looks a lot like their traditional workbook. This must be the most important. So they would focus on that and they'd kind of blow off the forums. Well, the forums were actually worth a lot more of their grade than the online workbook, because I felt like this is where I'm seeing them produce language in an authentic way. And I'd craft questions that would require certain grammar forms to be used. So I really had to write really clear directions about my expectations, and I had to give them practice with the forum. So that's when I started realizing like the introduction forum that I had at the beginning was doing work for me. It was teaching them how to read directions, how to, and if what they're posting corresponds with the directions, that's how they get credit. And the graduate level, you don't have to have these kind of like do this point, do this point, do this point necessarily. But with my students, participating in a forum for the first time, I really had to become really clear about what their grade corresponded to, and practice and give them examples and modeling of how to participate in a forum. Teacher presence. I think this is always difficult to find the right balance. You want to be involved in those discussion forums and those interactions, but not too much, because oftentimes when the instructor chimes in, it silences other people, and they're kind of like, oh, she has the answer, so that's the answer now, so I'm not going to say anything. So it's you need to be involved. You don't have to respond to every student, I don't think, all the time, but you need to show that you're reading it, that you care about what they're saying. So I'm always kind of walk that fine balance. You'll notice in our discussion forums, I kind of wait and see what conversation transpires, and then I kind of try to jump in later and just, add to it. Because I really feel very much that although I've created this experience for us, I am very much a peer of all of you, so I don't want to in any way silence the conversation. Assessment. So when you're doing an interactive activity online, and you have to think about how are you going to measure it and be clear with the students about it as well. So are you going to use a rubric? Are you going to have certain measurable goals that are going to come out of the activity? Are they doing a project? Are they in the discussion forum? What are you looking for? So is it just that they post 3 times, or is it there a certain quality that you're looking for? And I think a lot of times with students, you have to really let them know, like, I ask this question because I'm looking for you to demonstrate some kind of learning in your response, not to just have a conversation. That comes back to kind of the idea that discussion forums are an academic conversation. Structure. So how are you going to structure the forum? Like if you have a large class, I really encourage people to put people in small groups, because it's very overwhelming, as you probably know, that if you are in a large class discussion, every time you look on, there's just so many posts to read, and you don't really feel like, you can really engage too much with anybody, because it's just like you feel like you should respond to everybody, or you're not really sure what to do. So I find if you put people in small groups, they'll build a tighter rapport, and they'll be able to discuss at a deeper level because they won't feel kind of distracted by so many posts. If you make the activity in the discussion forum task-oriented, like by this day come up with a consensus, the students are going to have to go back and forth to negotiate. So that's going to cause them to have to interact. So if there's a task they're completing together. Role plays, taking on the perspective of somebody else in the forum, or jigsaw. Jigsaw is when different people come to the discussion with different pieces of information. So if you're studying a topic and one person's reading one chapter, one person's reading another chapter, one person's reading another chapter, and then they're putting the information together. So each person has some of the knowledge they have to share, so they have to interact. Or creating roles. You can have, and this can rotate, like one person takes the lead in the discussion, one person facilitates it, one person summarizes it, or sometimes there's a person that pulls people back in if the discussion gets derailed. So really thinking about the structure. I think just to post one question at the top and say like discuss and talk doesn't usually yield good results. So how do you promote student interaction in your classroom, in your physical classroom? There's probably tips and strategies and that you've come to swear by that you already know work to create this kind of quality interaction in the classroom. So those experiences are very important because when you're starting to design for online, you want to think, how can I take advantage of technology to further enhance those student interactions online? What is the method that is creating this interaction? And then Chris is going to be talking to us in the next class about the Socratic method. We're going to experience the Socratic method, so we'll be able to think about that creates interaction in the class, very student-centered. So how can you create an experience like that online? And as part of it is you have to break out, you have to really take a cube and look at it in a different way because you can't do the same thing. So what you're trying to think is, what is the essence of this and how can I do that online? And it takes a lot of sometimes uncomfortable shifting out of comfort zones to do that. I work with really good faculty who are amazing in the classroom and they know what they do is good and they've been doing it for many years and there's some things that they think are just so important, and those things are important, but when you go to the online environment, it might shift what that looks like. And it's really, you kind of want to just like break everything and then put it back together. I don't know if that's clear, but you really need to it's like when you go to a different culture, you see things from a different angle. And I feel like going into online teaching is kind of like going into a new culture. Okay, so that brings us to this section, learner interaction engagement, which we're going to be focusing on for the next few weeks. And I find this section really exciting. It's my favorite one. Let's go into the to-do list. So here you have this, how it's broken down into the 3 weeks. So this week there's going to be a lot of reading. And the only thing you're actually doing is participating in this vlog. Next week, you're going to be creating 2 engagement deliverables for me, and the information about that is here. Basically, you're going to be, 1, creating a discussion forum. I'll click over there. You'll be creating a discussion forum based on the best practices from the readings that you've been doing. And here's a Moodle forum documentation on the technical how-to in your course. And give a nice introduction to it here in the forum and then link back to it so that we can understand like what your method was for creating the discussion forum with intention. And then the second task is to prepare a screencast that introduces an online tool. So your audience is us. Do it, whatever is easiest for you, whatever screencast tool. It can be quick and dirty. I'd imagine they're going to be about 15-20 minutes. But it might be shorter, probably shouldn't be too much longer. And then the third week, you're actually going to be going back and returning to developing other activities to engage students with the content, the instruction, their peers in your course. And then you'll be participating in that forum where we're going to, again, be invited to look into your course and see and give you feedback on those activities. Instead, I've created, everyone's going to be responsible for 2 classmates in terms of giving them feedback. So here's the names of who you'll be giving feedback to. Again, if you have any questions, please post to the help forum. A few of you are posting me individual questions, which is fine, but I feel like the help forum really is great because then other people maybe are having the same question and not asking it, and I'd like to be able to answer it for everybody. So go through this, please ask away, ask questions, have fun with this unit. I think it's fun. And I will see you on March 13th 8 o'clock in the evening, I'll be sending you an invite for Adobe Connect where Bill will be leading us through a Photoshop lesson. All right, Moodle on.